So just to let you know, there is a cutoff. The last video, like right now, it happened. So if there's a weird transition, that's why. Okay, so that's one up on Wall Street. I didn't think I would talk about the book for 30 minutes. So wow. I mean, I probably missed a lot about the book, but you're gonna read it. It's 300 pages. You can get a podcast of it on YouTube. It's like 2 hours, I think, the audiobook. Um, I'll give you a little secret. If you search on Google, you can find a PDF of it for free. So it costs you nothing to read it. If you don't want to buy it for $8 or go to library. So I wouldn't go to library because you want to highlight it. Like I buy all my books because I put highlights. I have little notes and highlight all my books in general. So um so just like it's just like basically he goes through the book just to finish up. Like he talks about like La Quinta. So you'll see it in the book. It was a small hotel chain. He thought they had an advantage because they didn't have conference rooms in every hotel. And he realized that not every hotel needs a conference room. So he found that edge. And it's a simple business. It's just hotels. He could follow the cash flows, and that was one example. He talks about a few examples in the book. So he's just looking for the. I mean, like, what are your chances of finding that? I mean, I think you still can. I think you can still find attractive, simple, small businesses that are within your core of competency. Like for me, like I do industrials because I was a quartermaster officer, so I understand logistics. I worked at Pepsi, so I understand kind of the industrial part of maybe some of that. My brother's an engineer. I have a friend who's a physics teacher. I have a friend who works in utilities, with electrical grid. So I have these people that I can draw on to make industrial investments, and then retail investments are just that's I understand, like Home Depot, McDonald's, Pepsi, Tractor Supply. I get these businesses; they're very appealing to me as an investor, which probably are some of the similar businesses that not the Pepsi, but like the Tractor Supply could have been a great business that Peter Lynch maybe could have found in a different world. Um, the one example I'll give you, this is one that I didn't do, but I think this would have been a very Peter Lynch investment that maybe I should have paid more attention to. But I had like just read his book, I think, so it wasn't like ingrained in me so much. Um, but my wife found Ulta, the beauty store, and I remember she took me to Ulta, and this was probably, God, maybe like 2014 or 16 or something the first time. And we go into Ulta, they open one at our mall, and I'm just like, what the hell? Like I've never a full blown makeup store. And she would just go in there and just wander around. Every time she went in, it was like she would spend a bunch of money. I would just sit in the freaking mall. But I could see like you could see like the amazement and the business potential of, because before like businesses like this, you just had the kiosks at the department stores that sold makeup. There wasn't like maybe Sephora and this now, but they weren't like full blown makeup stores like of this freaking quality for adults. There were makeup stores for little girls, but um, so like that could have been that would have been maybe a Peter Lynch trait. Like I would have seen the value as a married man with my wife that loved this store. We went a lot. She got all her makeup eventually, not at first, but then eventually she just got all her makeup at Ulta. So I could have looked at the financials, which is part of it's like it's not just story and your experiences. You also have to look at the financials. It's a blending of all these concepts is what would make like a Peter Lynch investor. So the experience of going to Alta, seeing the value combined with, like, I could see the story of the future of that business. They could just expand. They didn't have a lot of stores. Then you could look, say, 2015. I would have looked at fast. Okay, 2015. Let's go back. So you would have seen if I looked at it like 2015. So you're seeing really good revenue growth, right? Let's pull this out. So really good revenue growth, net income. You're seeing big net income, 411 to 507. Or no, that's the wrong category. I'm sorry. So here, net income's going up, So if I looked at 2015, I would have seen some promising numbers as an investment. He doesn't really talk about profitability or margin in One Up on Wall Street. He's mostly fixated on cash, the balance sheet, cash flows. So he's looking at cash. He's looking at long-term debt. So I would have looked at 2015. I would have seen no long-term debt. If I had looked at this, let's say, no long-term debt at all, and we got cash of 350. So if I like this would have been an amazing investment for a Peter Lynch type investor. Um, just one of those like there's lots of investments I wish I could have done. So it is what it is, right? Um, so if we go back, say if I had, I mean, here's 2015, right? Would have been a great investment. I mean, it would have been something in the 150, 170s. Now we're up to 500. Um, I guess you could say, well, Dan, well, if you thought it was great then, why don't you buy it now? Well, I mean, I'm not a Peter Lynch. I'm not copying Peter Lynch. My long-term investments are still dividend growth. So Alta doesn't pay dividends. So the only way I would speculate, maybe, I mean, I should have bought it in 2020, right? So one could have got it at the same price that it was in 2015. It's an amazing business. It should be on your watch list. You don't have to be a dividend investor, but this is a very appealing business. Just something I've watched. But that's an example that would have been a very successful Peter Lynch investment. It's not a 10 bagger, but it would have been, what is it, a 4 bagger? So stuff like that. That's like what I would think a Peter Lynch investment would be. So hide your wives if you go to the mall. They already know about Alta. You're screwed. So this was he did this what was it, like 2 weeks ago. So the I'll just play this one part. He asks him if he still believes his investing process is relevant in today's world, because remember, this book was written in the late 80s, so it's been a long time since he wrote that book. So here's his answer.
Let's talk about buy what you know. I'm so curious these days how you're thinking about the economy.
Well, I think people, they're investing in individual stocks. It's sad they're careful when they buy a refrigerator or an airplane flight. If they're careful with their money, and they'll hear about a stock on the bus, and they put $5,000 or $10,000 on it. They have no idea what they do. So you're really going to be careful. Look at the company, look at the balance sheet. What is the reason the stock should be higher? The sucker's going up. It's not a good reason.
Is your sense, though, that the style of investing that you pioneered is still doable and winnable today?
Well, I think looking for something different, looking for something that's a good story. I mean, who would have guessed TJX, a local?
He does talk about story. It's not story investing. All right. This is what kills me about retail. You don't invest on the story, but the story of a business is part of an investment process. Peter Lynch talks about it in One Up on Wall Street. The story is the story of the company. So it's like, how do you see this company growing and improving and getting bigger in the future? So he's looking at the financials. He sees a promising investment opportunity, and then he's like, how does this play out in the future? The story of the company. But a lot of terms you've heard on YouTube. I don't know if he pioneered them, but he talked about them back in the day, basically.
The company would have gone up 50-fold, or Stop and Shop would go up 10-fold, or Analog Devices, or NVIDIA. I couldn't pronounce NVIDIA. So you have to find a company that's either a turnaround or a company that's going to grow, like Panera or Family Dollar stores. I'm not saying that buys now, but that's what's made our. Sears is rolled over, so so Kmart's rolled over, IBM slowed down, but we've had new companies come along, and that's the nature. You have to be looking for new companies and look at the balance sheet. You can add 5 and 5 and get reasonably close to 10. You should be able to look at the balance sheet and say, here's 2 depressed companies. They've gone from 50 to 3. One company's got $3 million in cash and no debt. One's got $3 million in debt, no cash. Which one are you going to buy? I mean, that's not too hard to do.
Peter, I watch you.
So again, he big emphasis on cash, long-term debt of a company. Same things he talked about One Up on Wall Street. He hasn't really changed. One thing I'll mention, like, so he doesn't like index investing. You can read up on it. He thinks passive investing is a problem. He's a fund manager that ran a fund that picked stocks, like, for his career. He's a professional investor. He's picked stocks his whole life. Why would you think he wants to buy index funds? So he's not a big fan of them. You know, you can go read what he says. You know, you figure it out. I have changed. I used to think individual stocks were the only way. I've changed my ways. I'm going to add more ETFs into investing. Not S&P 500, but they're going to be dividend growth, you know, ETF still. So, you know, it is what it is. Like, so we're not copying Peter Lynch. You should be inspired by him, I think, like a lot of these investors. So other than that, we're basically at the end. I'm probably going to have to, Jesus, this went on for like 40, 50 minutes. It's going to be like 3-part, I think, series. So the other the only other parts, there's 2 YouTube videos that you should watch if you want to learn more about Peter Lynch from himself. So you can find this on YouTube. This is a really good interview. Maybe you don't like Charlie Rose for given reason, but I don't know. It was a good interview. It's like 30 minutes. Um, that's good. This one, you've probably seen a lot of clips from this. This is one of his most famous speeches. He goes into, honestly, he talks about a lot of the same stuff from One Up on Wall Street in this speech. So you'll see if you read the book and then watch this, you'll get a lot. You should read the book regardless. Don't friggin' be like, oh, I don't need to read. I'll just watch this video. Like, come on, guys. I have a whole stack of books I'm going to go over that you should read, if you want to be a dividend growth investor. So come on, you can read. Like, it's not hard. Devote like 30 minutes a day to reading. All right, do it right before you go to bed or something. I recommend when you read these books, you should have a highlighter. You should highlight. This is what I do. I highlight sections I find relevant. I have little sticky notes and I'll tab them, because how else are you going to know where to reference after you've read it? So for these investment books, you should really put in the work of tabbing out your book, and so you can go back and make reference to it. Um, but yeah, this is a great. It's Peter Lynch 1994 lecture, timestamps. So there you go. You see, I guess I could put it in the comments of the video. So I think this is almost an hour total. Jeez. So this is Peter Lynch. There's probably way more. I screwed up some of the Peter Lynch stuff. I was more focused on One Up on Wall Street. If he's recanted some of those theories or whatever, then okay. But nonetheless, he's the super investor I grew up with, basically. I'm not a Warren Buffett guy. I don't have his books. I haven't read Warren Buffett. I've seen some of his speeches, but Peter Lynch was the person that I read and followed some of his teachings. So I guess I'll preview. So the next book, I don't think, I'll be honest. Okay. It's going to be a quick, it's a very basic book, very basic. It's the most basic parts of dividend investing. And you could probably, I read this book in like half a day, probably less. But we're going to start small. And then the next book will build more complex theories. And then the third book in the series, there's actual modeling and it's more advanced topics. So it's a very specific order. So he has a YouTube channel. Um, it's not on my list of channels that I like. It's not on my recommended list. He's a fine YouTuber. He's just not one of my go-to guys. But go subscribe to him if you want to watch him. He has some good content. But this will be the next book. I'm not going to do it right away. I'll probably do some other stuff. And then we'll go back to book reviews. So I'm trying to intermix different topics because I don't want to talk about one thing too much. It's boring. So that's Peter Lynch. He has other books. I haven't read Peter Lynch's other books. I heard the book after this wasn't entire. He talked about like specific investments, which I don't really care what he did in the 90s. I don't think that's specific investments. It's like, yeah, if you want to read more of his books, go ahead. Um, so this will probably be a 2-part or a 3-part Peter Lynch series. And then, so hope you enjoyed this. If I don't know, I tried to just cover what I thought was interesting parts about the book. So hope you enjoy the book. go get it. And I will see you later. Thank you.